I'm so thrilled. It's Saturday morning, and again, elders coming at you. Dewey Freeman, and I'm Mark Sylvester. Dewey,
Good morning.
what a week it's been, huh?
Oh my gosh. Everything from 4+ feet of snow to spring coming to incredibly intense, heartbreaking things happening in the world.
I
So,
was reminded that last Saturday, the day we moved my father-in-law into his new place, that it was the first day of spring, and I thought new beginnings, and what a great frame to put around that. And it feels, with so much in the news, there are new beginnings and actually tragic endings. For our hearts go out to the families in Boulder and the families in Atlanta. Um,
yeah.
I don't know that we have an answer for those, but this week we're going to talk about when the universe taps you on the shoulder. And Dewey, this idea is that um, I have a belief that we have free will. I believe in free will. I also believe that there is a path that's laid out for me if I want to take it. I believe that as well. It's a deep belief, and that I don't have to. I can if I want. And I feel my whole life that there's been this. Um, it's not a guardian angel, but you could think of it as that. It's the universe going, "Hey, Padawan," and just kind of pushes me a little over. It goes, "Hey, hey, 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 hey," and I
Hey,
have a visual of that. Um, do you have a sense of that? I mean, I have a lot to say on this, but I want to hear. Do you have a sense of that happening in your life?
I do. And earlier when you said Padawan, what came to mind was grasshopper. We had talked about a little bit. And it's like, hey, grasshopper. And one of the struggles for me around this is I feel like I've been tapped so many times in such gracious ways, and I struggle with keeping up with all of the openings, and that's how I think about it. Is that
Interesting.
when I
Huh.
when I get tapped, yeah, I feel like an opening is being created for me
Yes.
to step
Yeah.
into,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and not in the sense of, I mean, you mentioned, I forget the exact word you used even a few minutes ago, but that there's some path,
Yeah.
um, and each step along that path is an opening.
Interesting. For me, it's that something happens. The universe puts something in front of us, and you either respond to that thing, or if you're not paying attention, just goes by. It that conversation. Hey, would you like to join me on? Or hey, I here's a book I think you ought to read. Or gosh, we'd love you to pay attention to. And I think of I'm the visual guy, so I'm kind of everything
Mm-hmm.
is. So I think of my life and around me, my ecosystem is a big radar screen. Imagine a big battleship or something,
Mm-hmm.
and or air traffic control. I guess is less violent. Um, and and
Air
I'm
traffic control is good with all the little
yeah,
dots on the radar.
right. And so I think of the little levers you have, and what are friendlies and what are foes, right, in my
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem, and how fine tuned do I have the radar to hear the weak ties? We have strong ties and weak ties in life, and there's been studies that some of the more interesting things come from the weak ties, and it's counterintuitive. So I tend to have my radar very, very finely tuned because I'm of a belief that one of those things is going to pay attention over here. A perfect example is Traver introducing you to me, introducing us.
Right.
And the universe puts these conversations in our path and was like, hey, why don't you just hit the record button? Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And you never know where those things are going. So the question on the table is, and this is like a thing. This happens 5 or 6 times a year, where it's one you should pay attention to. So the question to the listener is, how finely tuned is your radar, and what do you do when the universe taps you on the shoulder? There, sir, is the question. It sometimes takes me a while to get to it, but I find that rather than speechifying, I want to punctuate the comment with the actual question in the way that makes sense.
Totally. So say the question again, please.
The first part is, are you aware the universe is tapping you on the shoulder? Let's start there.
Am I aware of that?
How is someone, right, the person who's listening right now and they're thinking about this, and in improv we call it the first unusual thing. You're just going about the scene, you're having this conversation, and then something happens, something said, something happens, we call it the first unusual thing. And in life, as in improv, because improv is life is improv,
right,
there's an unusual thing. Why would he ask me about that? Why did they send me that book? Why did that email was,
So one of the pieces that strikes me so much when you're talking is a lot of what happens for me is not about the why. A lot of what happens for me is about the how. And not only how did something happen, like you and I meeting, because I mean, the truth is when we were introduced, I thought, oh, this will be a great for chat. We'll chat for 20 minutes and, periodically I might run into you. Well, obviously we chatted way longer than 20 minutes and we have begun building something. When I get tapped on my shoulder, it goes, and when I really begin listening is when that energy from being tapped on my shoulder goes to my gut. And my gut is saying, oh, this is something to pay attention to. And much of what the way that I live my life is as closely to being nature-based as possible. And in an uncivilized or undomesticated process, if you're a horse, if you're an elk, if you're a bird, there's oftentimes the thought process of the why of something is not there. However, the intuitive process that gets felt in my gut is there big time. And how do I receive that in my gut, and how do I respond to that instead of just going, oh, well, okay, well, my stomach or my gut sense was like, yeah, but I'm not going to listen to that. Or am I really going to listen to this?
So therein lies the nub of it, right? Which is, it's funny how all of our questions get back to trust. Absolutely. Because it's trusting yourself. Someone said to me years ago, he said, you know that saying, gut feeling. I have a gut feeling. And this is what we're talking about. I have a gut feeling.
Right.
My gut is telling me right now to pay attention. Right. My gut's telling me that. And we listen to our brain, we listen to everything. Why not listen to that? That being said, he said, when you have that feeling, it is a signal to the brain that you don't know enough yet about what gave you the gut feeling. And you need to ask more questions.
That makes sense.
And it's, you know, what's interesting now that I think about it, because I remember very specifically where I was sitting in Santa Barbara at a conference in a small room of a dozen people, and this person had been brought in to teach us something. I have no idea what it was. And it was probably an offhand remark that he made that sat in me this whole time, so it could come out now. And
Yeah.
that gut feeling is, well, I don't know about, well, why did Traver introduce us? I'm going to go to why, and which is interesting here. But the how is, how are you going to respond? How are you going to react? And I think you had said earlier that each step along that journey was an opening, was a tap. And I think there's those some real significant ones that happen to us. Let's see if we can carry the metaphor out just a little bit. In a very, very tragic way, the last 2 weeks, heck, there on the seventh day, when Boulder happened, there had been 7 mass shootings in America. Mass shooting defined by the New York Times is more than 4 people dead in 7 days.
7 mass shootings in 7 days.
7 days. And which is completely unacceptable. 90% of, Americans say that's unacceptable. Yet we can't do anything about it. I can't get into politics because I can't get into I just don't know about any of those things. However, I will say that was a massive tap on the shoulder for a lot of people.
What's interesting, there's a couple of things. At some point, I want to circle back to the brain and gut piece. And I want to respond to what you're saying, because actually right now, my whole insides are going, oh my God, I did not know there were 7 mass shootings in 7 days. I knew of 3. What was interesting about the one in Boulder for me, because for those men in the nation that don't know, I live west of Golden up in the foothills, which is about 20 to 25 minutes from Boulder. And I've taught at the university in Boulder for many years, or a university in Boulder. That day, I knew something was wrong. I spent my whole day going, what's wrong? And even when I was driving, because I was running a bunch of errands and doing a bunch of things, and I almost felt paranoid. Not paranoid, that's hyper alert would be a better word.
Your radar was lit.
Yeah, my radar was lit, and it was like, something is wrong. Something is wrong. And then I actually went into a cell phone store because I got a new cell phone and needed to activate it. And I saw the mass shootings in progress on the TV in the store. What was also interesting is I'm part of a first responder unit up here on the mountain, and there's a program called FirstNet, and the guy in the store, I had my mask on that said fire department, and the manager in the store said, "Oh, are you part of that fire department?" I said yes, and I ended up getting a whole new it's called FirstNet system on my phone, which is specifically for first
Huh.
responders. So with all of that, not only when I look at it, and this is the how part of it that I look at, it's like, okay, I was on high alert all day. I saw this shooting. I got this particular phone thing, and it's like, okay, this means I need to do something with this.
See, there you go. That's it.
And exactly what that is, I mean, the same way that you spoke of, it's like I don't want to get into politics and gun control and stuff like that. That's not what this show and program is about. What I will say is what I walk around with is that with all that's going on, I many times have this gut feeling of there's something more. There's something more that needs to be explored. There's something deeper that we need to look at. And I speak a lot about attachment, and that attachment, my phrase, the question that gets asked in the attachment process is the world okay? And for some people, that hopefully most of the time the answer is yes. And for other people, and I think for all of us at times, the answer is no. And
when you say, I want to interrupt for a second, sorry.
Please.
When you say, is the world okay, or do you say, is your world okay?
Well, actually, it's both. And is my world okay? Yeah, living on the side of a mountain with my horses and my partner, my world is freaking great. And I'm still part of the bigger community, the bigger world. And I feel, and the tap on the shoulder from the universe is something needs to happen here to help others, because if the world's okay, we don't go around harming other people.
Right.
We don't do that. None of us do that. And I don't know.
To that specific thought that, last week we talked about the root cause, right? We talked about causal chains. We talked about what was that thing. And you said there's something else going on, and, we don't know what's going on in someone's head, and we don't know any of that. And I just reflected to, an act of violence that I had committed when I was 21 against, my son's mom, my first wife. And it was, and I threw vegetables at her. Okay. So it wasn't bad, but she came into the kitchen. I was working out at UCSB, and she was certifiable. We left. I ended up becoming a single dad and raising my boy. She had spun out, but she came in crazy into the kitchen, just yelling and screaming at like 7 a.m. out at the university, and throwing. The produce had come in, and there were avocados, and she just started throwing avocados over the whole place. And I was like, this is nuts. And I went over, you can't walk in here and do this, and pushed her, and she went out the screen door and lost her balance and fell. And about a half hour later, the cop showed up, and they said, we're so sorry. It's obvious she's not present here, but we've got to she's making a citizen's arrest, and went to jail, and I reflect on that. I've never told that story. I reflect on what causes us to do a violent act. It hadn't planned on any of that stuff. And I don't know what was going on in someone's head when they go and do what they do, but they feel compelled to do something. And I think that I'm the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet on the planet. Yet that happened.
That is, yes, exactly.
That happened.
What would have happened had you or she had support?
At the moment,
Yeah, or before that.
it probably wouldn't have gotten to a breaking point.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I see that's happening is in the nation, in my practice, in working with men, women, and children, is the desperate isolation of people and the desperate aloneness of people walking in the world and feeling like there is no place to go. There's nobody to connect to. There's nobody to say I'm hurting. There's nobody to say I'm empty to. And so we end up throwing avocados in one way or another,
Yeah.
whether it be from her side, because it would be easy to, I hear what you're saying, when you say she's certifiable and then you were responding. And it's like something happened for her sometime in her life.
I liken it to she was raised very, very conservatively, and again, back to the visual to help me understand life. She was a watch spring that was wound too tight, and it was right at the time of the women's movement. And she got involved in the very nascent beginnings of NOW, the National Organization of Women. And what happened is that opened the back of the watch, and rather than just continue ticking, now the watch is open and it continues to tick. There was so much internal pressure in there that watch sprung, and she was on a spiral out. And that was at the very beginning of that spiral. And honestly, because she's my son's mom and it's now 48 years later, she still hasn't reached the outer end of that spiral. And it's been that way her whole life, and can't be around the grandkids, can't be around anything, but still that doesn't give any license, right? It's like, so there's two things. I want to respond to you don't have anybody to talk to. One of the primary things we want is connection, whether you call it love, community, being able to talk to someone else. I know all the guys listening can deeply resonate with that, which is why thankfully Traver has created this place, a safe place for everybody to talk and feel like they're part of something. So and you guys, you got to know you can reach out to any of us at any time to talk to us anytime. And I'm curious. I've been blessed. We're both blessed. We have relationships, and we will sit down. I know we'll sit down and say, man, I don't have anybody to talk to but you. You're the one. And this thing that I'm going to talk to you about, you can't do a thing about. And I know that. I just need to get it out of this and into this so I can understand it a little bit more. And someone can be empathetic and go, yeah, I was glad to be able to give you that space. In reciprocal, I can be the person who will say, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one, but I can listen, right? And you can not feel lost and alone.
What creates the first part of healing from any kind of injury is what I would call blood supply.
Huh. Okay. Tell me more, doctor.
No, this is like and I have to. I'll be 100% honest and transparent. I've never called it that before. Right now,
See?
so this is a gut level piece. So you're seeing it. Everybody else is seeing it in action at this very moment. I'm going to use my hand as a metaphor.
Yeah.
My thumb was crushed in an accident. My doctor, bless his heart, took skin from here, rerouted a blood vessel down through my hand and up through my thumb, and tried to reattach my thumb. That did not work. That operation failed as hard as he tried. And I had to go in and get a second surgery to basically remove that tip of my thumb. The reason that operation failed was because it didn't get enough blood. There was no blood. There wasn't enough blood supply, so that skin died. That patch of skin that it's called a flap in medical terms, versus like here. After he took that, I had to have a skin graft to replace that. When we get to sit down and hear and truly be listened to, truly be seen, truly be touched, truly be gotten, that gives us blood supply for life.
There you go.
So when you and I have spoken, and we've been fortunate enough to get to speak to each other about some very intense things in our lives, that creates a blood supply. And actually, what's it's literally that patch, that flap, so to speak, that has blood supply to continue living. And even physiologically, we change when we get listened
to. Yeah, there's a transformation, isn't there?
Yeah, our heart rate changes, our gut changes, our respiratory rate changes, and we actually begin to settle. When we begin to settle, we're in when we do that, we get into our parasympathetic nervous system versus our sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
Our sympathetic nervous system cuts off blood supply from everything but our vital organs. When we get listened to, blood supply gets to the rest of our being, gets to our brain, gets to our heart, and allows us to live. Now, I've been accused all of my life of making shit up, and I just made that up that way. And so I'm very open. I would love your input. I would love your response. And if you think I'm full of shit, please tell me.
Well, you're not. And our ability to use metaphor and analogy and to tell stories about complex ideas is what separates us from the bonobos. Okay. That is a purely human thing, because part of what I hope this show is for people is the role of elder is an important one, and there's always at least one in the nation. We're lucky we have two, and there's probably more. And if there are more, please write us. We want to know that.
Absolutely.
But it's that visual, because for me, I instigate the parasympathetic system on command several times a day, on purpose, and I do it. This part of my TED talk was how the first thing you do when you're faced with this challenge, this thing that you want to do so bad. You just like, I can't, let me get me in the game, coach. You're like that. And you're frozen because you don't know what to do.
Right.
Right. You're just frozen and your feet are in concrete. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I can't go. I can't do it. I don't know where to start. And I say, first step, take a breath.
Yes.
And before we do our show,
we take a breath together.
Take a breath because I want to. And I was taught this by a psychologist who said that's what triggers the parasympathetic system, and it takes your fight versus flight, which we've heard, and shuts that off, lowers my shields, all the other metaphors that we use, but it allows me, I'm safe now. I can receive, like we've said, if you want to influence, you have to be influenced. Right. And so your discussion and the way it connected for you is blood supply. We all understand that. And you had the added benefit of actually showing us. Unfortunately, it's an expensive lesson, but maybe all of that happened just so you could tell the lesson today.
Very and make possibly.
That we don't know that your path was that. Who knows? We don't know. And it may be that someone heard that today and said, I'm just going to stop and listen to someone because they need me to be there. And the way I can give is to be quiet and listen, not try to solve, just be the blood supply that person desperately needs to get on with what they need to get on with, whatever that is. I can't get in their head. Just, I'm here for you. I'll give you space, and I love you. And I want you to just, in our house, we call it spring cleaning. And it is appropriate because it is spring. This was something my wife was taught, and she taught it to me. So we might say, I might say, well, what else do you have about giving space? And you'll say whatever you say. And I hear that. I don't react. I'm neutral. And I'll say, hey, Dewey, what else do you have on giving space? And you'll say something, and I will say that. We'll do that little dance. So it might be, with my daughter, might be, what else do you have on being frustrated? With my gorgeous grandson. I inserted the word gorgeous. What else do you have about being frustrated? And she'll say something, and I'll just say, what else do you have about being frustrated? Because sometimes it's hard to do. You need some help on the spring cleaning. You need someone who's like helping with the lift. And those sessions are about, I don't know, 6-7 minutes long. And at the end of that, you're like, oh, thanks.
Oh, thank God. So what you just said is amazing. Let me throw in one other sort of fun fact, so to speak. When we feel really connected and when we have gut level feelings, many times we are borrowing someone else's nervous system.
Ooh.
When you breathe and you are in that parasympathetic part of your nervous system, and I'm up here, for instance, what I'm literally doing is I'm borrowing your nervous system to bring me back down to where our nervous systems are working together.
Mm-hmm.
And the outward part of that is, hey, well, tell me more about your frustration. And how about my gorgeous grandson? That's the way we're communicating about it. And if your nervous system was up here, well, how's my gorgeous grandson? that same words. This is the how. Same words. But if you're here and your nervous system is settled, you literally will settle my nervous system and change everything that's going on inside me.
You're reminding me, what I love about our conversations is these threads get pulled and books get opened up here that have been on the shelf for many, 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 many years. I ran a software company for from the time I was 30 till I was 50, and then I continued. But there was one software company, computer animation software, and I ran all the customer support because I come from the hospitality industry, so it was like a natural for me to pay attention to that.
Right.
And we had someone come in and talk to us. We had a psychologist, an organizational psychologist, come in and talk to the team and I about the psychology of the support phone call. And when someone calls, they're in distress because a thing isn't working. We all know technology is great when it works. And when it doesn't work, we get frustrated, and there's some level of frustration about that. And so we want to get it fixed so we can get the thing done we want to do. Add on to that someone has paid you many thousands of dollars for that software. We're more frustrated. If the software is free, we're more frustrated than if we pay a lot of money, by the way, because we know.
No kidding.
Right. That's another show. But what she taught us was exactly what you said, was you're listening for their frustration level, and they're up here and they're very upset, and it's not working, and oh my God, I'm on deadline, I've got to get this thing done in your deal. And your job is to be that calm. And she taught us about calming voice and calming energy, because what we're trying to do is get them to hear, and not, we're not patronizing or any of that stuff. It's all energetic, as you.
Yes, not exactly.
None of that.
Exactly.
Right. I'm not discounting it. Yes, God, you're kidding. That is terrible. But you know what she said? Get up there with them. Oh my God, I can't believe that's happening to you. And that's really, I think maybe if we tell me a little bit more about that, we could probably figure out what's wrong. And so she taught us how to use our voice, meet them where they are,
right,
and land the plane.
You bet. Exactly. So I know we're going to run out of time here in a moment. What you just said is super right on. Sometimes we cannot find that person, especially right in the moment. Two things will help dramatically. One is going outside in nature. Nature will settle you.
Yeah. Let's take a walk. Let's take a walk. Yeah. Let's get outside. Let's take a walk.
Another is being around animals. And it's actually part of why I use horses. What's interesting is horses are about, we're maybe 150, 200 pounds. Horses are about 12 or 1,300 pounds. They're so much bigger than us that when their nervous system is settled, they bring us down even quicker than another human does. And we're outside. So, and I'm saying this purposely for the men and hopefully women who are hearing this, is that I can just hear someone going, yeah, but what happens if I don't have another person to talk to? And sometimes that happens. And it doesn't mean that we can't we have other ways to settle our nervous systems. And some of those, one of the primary ways is to go back to that very primal part of us who really, really settles and lives in nature.
What a perfect way to end. I never know on these journeys we take on Saturdays where it's going to end up and where it's what we'll learn along the way. Hey, I'll talk to you next week, my friend.
All right. Love you.
Bye-bye.
You take care. Bye bye.